Hello, Mr. Bond. Where are
Uh,
you now?
I'm in the bridal suite of some fancy country manor house.
I watched Skyfall.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's okay. It is an action film. I mean,
yeah.
I don't expect too much plot out of it, but it was
No,
interesting. That was my first James Bond film I've seen in like 10, 12 years, dude.
yeah. You've not really missed anything in the tense.
Yeah.
Well, I really wanted Daniel Craig to do well. Daniel Craig's from where I'm from, the town I usually stay in. He's from Hoylake, Hoyer
Oh,
Lake.
yep.
That's where he's from.
Okay.
And it's none of them are great. Casino Royale is good, but yeah, the whole thing needs a reboot. Definitely needs a reboot. But I'm
Yeah.
glad you
One
enjoyed
of the
Skyfall.
one of the action films out here, The Gray Man was being filmed, and there are some previews that finally came out, and you can see Ryan Gosling within the Prague trams with all the recognizable architecture. It's pretty cool, man.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Looking
All
forward to
right.
that. So, how have you been doing keeping up with this Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing? Has it given you any flashbacks?
Oh, bro, I said that in the video, man. It's just like reliving everything. Like, it's crazy listening to the actual voice recording
Mm,
of one of their fights. Oh my
mm,
god. I
mm.
mean, it doesn't help that the tonalities of both of our voices are similar, but
Yeah, yeah,
re-listening to that, it was almost word for word, tonality, inflection, vocabulary usage, all of
yes,
those things, man.
yeah. I thought it was interesting. I reviewed. I've not kept up to date with it because my sister's here with the kids from America, and then I reviewed some of it today for this podcast. And I could see thematically a recurrence, which is you have one reasonable person talking to an unreasonable person saying, look, we're in a toxic relationship. When you start fights with me, I have to move away from you, which is a reasonable, I mean, the really truly reasonable thing to have done for him would have been split up with her, and that would be that. But because he's entrapped in this cycle with her, he's sort of physically trying to relocate to other positions in the house, and she's clearly following him around. And you can hear that from the transcripts, you can hear that from the audio recordings. And at one point she says, why do you keep leaving me? And he's
Mhm.
like, well, even a boxer in the middle of a fight needs to take a time out. And, he needs to take a break from you for a minute.
Yeah.
And that is reframed as him abandoning her and breaking all of his promises to her. So he's never allowed to actually just move away from her. And that was the thing that gave me a flashback. I've been in two relationships like that.
Oh man, it's really interesting. It's like this coming time, a lot of these things are being blown out in a very mainstream collective sense. This
Yeah.
whole a part of it being withdrawal is offensive. Withdrawal is violence. Silence is violence. And if you don't say something or you delete a comment, it's
Yeah.
just as punishing as actually insulting someone.
Yes. Your option to withdraw from the field of battle is another form of aggression. So then you're put in a position where you can't be non-aggressive. You can't be Gandhi. Everything is a form of aggression. And a lady who's a mutual friend of ours on Instagram from Los Angeles messaged me a couple of days ago, and she said, I'm being gaslit into a situation where I'm being made to feel as though I'm the narcissist. And I said, well, that's very common. It's not so much that you're being gaslit into being the narcissist, it's that you're being positioned as the persecutor. So in the Karpman triangle, you can either be the persecutor, or you're the victim, or you're the savior. It's these all three completely toxic roles within the Karpman drama triangle. And with narcissistic abuse, everything you do is reframed as persecutory. So
Mhm.
as you're being persecuted, you are actually being persecuted. Your persecution is framed as you're the persecutor. You caused this. You initiated this. You're the aggressor. So of course, naturally, you try to withdraw. You're like, well, maybe it's true. It's the only reasonable thing. A reasonable person would consider the possibility that that's true and try to say, okay, time out then. Let's just time out. Maybe I am being an asshole and I'm just caught up in this thing. Let me breathe and think. But the narcissistic abuser cannot let you breathe and think. When you're on the ropes, then they have to push at that point, and your effort to breathe and think has to be reframed as more persecution and more aggression.
Yeah, that's exactly how it feels on the receiving end.
Hmm.
It's like, hey, I thought we were sparring. You're breaking the rules. You're pushing
Yeah.
me against the corner, and this is when you think you can win.
Yes.
This is when you're supposed to take a timeout so we can actually be even. But you don't
Yeah.
want it even because that's not how you utilize things. And to go on to what we were saying, it's kind of like you see this collectively. So, say for example, a person is the target of a cancellation, whatever. If
Mm.
the person doesn't reply, that's also a signal that they're guilty and also, further punishing. Silence is violence on a collective social crisis is
Mm.
also violent. Just, I think Bill Murray got caught up in some fucking shit. They closed down the entire movie set because apparently, like, he maybe yanked some girl's ponytail in a playful way, and then everybody freaked out, right?
Okay.
And now paparazzi's chasing him, and he's just not even looking at the camera and just moving, going on, ignoring everyone. But that's also another signifier of
Right.
like further punishment or further violence. And this is like a very recent thing, I feel.
Yeah. It's well, I think because Pandora's box opened and narcissism broke out of the box as an individual psychological problem. Psychology focuses on individuals. It's sociology that focuses on groups, or anthropology, or evolutionary biology. So psychology is the individual. When we say narcissistic personality disorder, by definition, we're talking about a person. We're not talking about groups. Groups is outside of psychology. And yet what we're facing is a pandemic. It's spread like a virus, so that you actually have group narcissistic personality disorder, cultural narcissistic personality disorder. And basically it's just it's a hysterical response, hysterical in the psychological sense. You don't get to say nothing. You don't get to choose silence. You don't get to choose withdrawal. You don't get to choose peace, because even that now will be interpreted as though you're doing something terrible, which is a completely it's a bad faith position. It's a totally bad faith position. It's incredibly uncharitable.
Mhm. What are your thoughts on his texts that are quite hostile in comparison to getting your finger severed, getting your bed shit on, to getting smacked in the head, to getting a cigarette put out on your face? Like a private text message between someone else that isn't acted upon is also just as bad, or
Could people just write in the comments what the worst things he said in the texts were? Um, as with from the beginning, when the Johnny Depp case broke, I had the option to say something, and I think it was back in 2016, and the time was just not right. It just wasn't right. Like if you picked a side on this thing, especially as a man, if you chose to side with a man, though, you would just be mobbed. I wouldn't have been cancelled, but I would have been mobbed, and I just didn't have the
well,
patience
this
to take it.
actually arose during the peak of the hashtag Me Too thing, and
Right.
Amber rode that wave. That's when her publicity was at an all-time high because she wrote that article and had it published right when it all went down. And she also has like an award acceptance for the damn thing, right? She
Right.
did a whole award speech, came with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think and so she rode a wave, which was what she wanted to do, and she'll fail, but she attempted to end his career. She certainly got him kicked out of an extremely lucrative contract with Disney playing Captain Jack Sparrow. So in the comments here we have things like Officer Squarehead, DJ Maxi Pad. Okay, that's pretty funny. He called her a "see you next Tuesday." Okay. So there's a thing that I saw from day one, which is it's called reactive abuse, where when you're cornered and you're not allowed to withdraw, two things, well, many things start to happen, but the personality comes under enormous stress, and you start to fragment a little bit. You start to decompensate a little bit. So I think he started drinking more and taking more drugs. And then, which is one thing, any coping mechanism, it could be food, it could be gambling, it could be pornography, but people men and women will start to engage in more unhealthy coping mechanism type behaviors. And then the second thing is with reactive abuse is they become abusive. You're trapped. So of course you're going to turn around and call somebody the C word, or you're going to call them a fat. I know one of the things he called her is a fat ass. You're going to say something horrible to somebody, but you're trapped. And that's why you're doing it. His ex-wife, his children, everybody who knew him, all of his bodyguards said he's not like that. He's a very sweet-natured person. So if he is behaving in this way, it's out of character. Anybody who's been trapped in this knows the levels of stress that it drives you to. And you start acting out. If you're abused, you become abusive. But as you just said, Pierre, we have to be proportionate. Like, where is the higher proportion of abuse happening? Who's trying to be reasonable? Who's trying to fix it? And who's trying to just destroy the other person's soul, to dominate them completely?
Right, right. And if anybody in the future discovers this and doesn't know who you are, please explain your background within this particular topic while I turn on my heater.
Okay. I am a career misogynist, and I hate women. I'm a self-hating white man. I particularly loathe white women, privileged, wealthy white women who
Jesus.
are parasites, who attach themselves to wealthy men and try to destroy them. Those are the ones I hate. The first world, lazy, entitled, exploitative, manipulative white women is who I. It's a joke. I could say, and it's a joke. It was a joke. I was joking. My name's Richard Grannon, and I help people overcome narcissistic abuse. I've been doing this since 2013.
Oh, okay. Well, I loved how the first half was like 10 times longer than the second half. God damn. British sarcasm. That's going to go over well with the Americans. Anyway.
He literally said he hates white women.
He said it, but he said it. Anyways, speaking of which, did you hear the bombshell of the psychologist that went on trial about the whole situation?
Yeah, it's great. She did a great job, Dr. Curry.
She was amazing. She was
she's
really
brilliant.
good, man.
Yeah. So there's a white woman who I like, which proves the joke. And she gave a great definition of histrionic and borderline personality disorder to the court that was understandable at like she didn't use a bunch of jargon, psychiatric terms. Like an intelligent 14-year-old would easily understand what she said. And I think it's a good little core lesson. So in her professional clinical opinion, Amber Heard has borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder. The drivers of both, with histrionic, I want to be the center of attention or I feel like I'm going to die. And with borderline, you must never leave me because if I'm left, I feel as though I'm going to die. So these are the key drivers behind these personality disorders.
And can you please clarify, because I have this spat in my comments section at the moment, people trying to differentiate narcissism from borderline. But of course.
Yeah. So there's different ways of thinking about this. What we can do, what many people may as well do. So level one would be just accept the American Psychiatric Association definitions of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for now, for understanding this case. There are 4 personality disorders that are called cluster B. That's the dramatic cluster of personality disorders. It has a high impact on other people. They're very annoying. They're quite predatory, exploitative, and they can be dangerous. It includes narcissism, borderline, histrionic, and antisocial personality disorder, which is what we now call psychopathy. So it's a broad range. At the next level down, so just accept that naively. At the next level down, with a bit more nuance, if you're very interested in psychology, you should be aware that when these things are diagnosed, they're very typically comorbid with each other. So if somebody has narcissism, they're probably going to get a clinical diagnosis for histrionic, borderline, ASPD as well. It's just highly likely with these personality disorders. And then a deeper level down, if you're super interested in the subject, you should know that all of these things are being reviewed at the moment, and that they can all essentially be expressions to some people. They're all like nuanced expressions of narcissism. And then to other people within psychology, clinicians, these are all expressions of psychopathy. You have people with very low levels of empathy. They're very capable of cruelty with their intimate partners. They don't care what pain they cause others. They're very self-centered. And some people like me, would say we're really all talking, it's all narcissism and a kind of moral psychopathy, a moral insanity, but these are styles. So histrionic is not a separate personality disorder to borderline, and narcissism, it's a style, it's a modality. But for what, I don't know how interested people would be in that.
Yeah, so but they're all under the same category. While you explain that, I'm holding back a cough. I really need to get some water. So
Get it out. You hack it out, sir. You hack it out. The way that I would explain this to people is you're talking about childhood trauma, people who've been traumatized in their childhood, and somehow through that childhood environment, they've learned certain patterns of survival. If they were not shown the right type of love, they can be shown too much love. They could be shown the wrong kind of entitlement, the wrong kind of attention. These boundaries can break. They don't learn to respect other people as others. They have very fragile egos, and the ego boundaries open up. So they start to consume everybody around them, and then they just have a super ego. And they can be very exploitative. They can be very dangerous, but typically these things start in childhood. It's not something Amber Heard did not acquire this in her adult life. This has been with her since she was a child.
I think the air is dry in here. That's why I'm coughing. But regardless of that, one interesting thing that people are actually bringing up, and then the psychologist also brought up, was the mirroring aspect that's very common in BPD individuals, that it's commonly known that they'll reflect and mirror the same behaviors to the point where they're maybe dressed like the other person and all of these things. Yeah. And a lot of these people on TikTok were speculating and showing the photos. And then the psychologist actually goes in and explains to the entire jury while Amber's there, like doodling the whole time. Just like pissed. You could see she was in fear. She was furious, but she was basically explaining the same particular thing, that this mirroring thing, because she would come in, or Johnny one day would come with a ponytail. She would come in with a ponytail, and it's like, okay, ponytail's pretty common. Then he comes in with this Gucci tie that has a bumblebee on it. She literally comes in with a Gucci tie and a bumblebee on it.
Yeah. This is part of, like, I mean, people will remember this from school. You would have had a friend who, or not everyone, but some people who have had friends at school in their teenage years who would target somebody and copy them and kind of just steal their identity a little bit. Think of the Matt Damon movie, The Talented Mr. Ripley. There's a sort of a soul eater thing, like, I want to be you so much, I'm going to become you, kind of a thing. Because with all of the narcissistic personality disorders, they're heavily driven by envy. So they're hyper competitive people. So they want what you have. They see what you have and they want to take it from you, either by force, which would be psychopathy, antisocial personality disorder, or by guile, by cunning, narcissism, fragile narcissism, borderline, and histrionic. But they're thieves, basically. They steal. And it doesn't surprise me at all. I noticed that inside of 5 years of being with Johnny Depp, there is no trace of an Australian accent with her whatsoever. Just none. It's all gone. And that's common. That's a very, very common thing. You see this chameleon-like ability to just, and very skillfully sometimes. They're very good at this because they've been doing it since childhood, to just absorb another person's essence, hoping to
Australian?
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's another coincidence. Anyways, yeah.
That's which is another reason to hate her, quite frankly.
You know what? One of my that one ex that I had, I also met when she was in Australia.
Yes. We love Australians. We love Australians.
Nothing to do with the actual landmass. Anyways, yeah. What the way that Dr. Curry broke everything down was so goddamn professional and really easily understandable. another thing that she brought up was, oh, I loved it because she brought up the diagnoses of the histrionic, the borderline, and then she also mentions how when they did the analysis or the questioning from her, she
Mm,
said, like, within her explanations and the questioning, she would contradict herself almost immediately, saying that, she likes to be understanding and non-judgmental while within the same breath judging the crap out of anybody that's around her.
right, right. Which is, when we talk about like that cultural narcissism thing, virtue signaling is a part of that. Like virtue signaling is a way of sending out to the environment, to the people around you, a certain image of who you want to be, like an avatar of who you want to be, and it's hyper idealized. The hyper idealized self in the field of narcissism is the false self. So you have this false persona that you push out to other people. That's who you want them to meet. That's who you want them to interpret you as. And it tends to be pretty basic stuff: spiritual, compassionate, charitable, giving, depending on who you are and your cultural background. Like, who should you be as a person of that ethnicity in that social class, from the country of origin you are, and who you're trying to climb with? What's trendy? Like, what's cool right now? What's a good thing to be? If she was like into hunting her own meat and eating it raw, that would be a contrary, that wouldn't be in line with, that wouldn't be congruent with the brand that she's trying to promote. And look, let's be fair to Amber Heard and everybody else who suffers with this personality disorder, and they do suffer with it. It's painful for them as well. It's awful for the people around them. It's awful for them too. We live in a culture that supports this. It actively encourages this. We're all trained now to think of ourselves as brands to be sold to others. And I'm not saying this absolves her of guilt or absolves anybody of guilt. We all have our cross to bear, and we have to, we have to protect other people from our own shadow side. But it would be unfair to not acknowledge that, like, she's raised in a culture where this is rewarded. It's actively rewarded.
Yeah. Correction. Apparently, she was born in Texas. A lot of the chat went crazy on that. So excuse us if she's not Australian. I don't know. But
is she not Australian?
I know a lot of people are saying
Texas. That was me. That wasn't Pierre. That's my mistake. I don't know why I thought she was Australian. I might have been flashbacking. That's my own personal issue to my Australian ex.
Yeah. You too?
Yeah, I had one.
Oh shit! All right, moving on from that.
And the Kiwi. I have one Australian and one Kiwi ex who both.
Good Lord.
Anyway, yeah.
Anyways, yeah. But yeah, the cultural conditioning at the moment is definitely very ripe and, let's say, very rewarding for people within this cluster B spectrum, particularly BPD and histrionic. And it's very interesting to see. Oh my God. I mean, like, to listen to the psychologist drop the B word, I was like, oh, she don't know what she gonna get into now with the internet. Because anytime that B word is mentioned, it's like Voldemort on the internet. They literally, I don't know where they come from. They just come out sprouting from the trees and then explain everything about BPD in 10 paragraph essays on any video that mentions that word.
What are you talking about? They don't come out from the trees. They're your followers. Your followers specifically. I have the narcissists. You have the bottom. I don't know where they're coming from.
With our powers combined, we drive the whole world mad.
Yeah, no, you have plenty of borderlines there. And I'm interested to know, so when people were arguing in the comments, were they saying that the Dr. Curry was wrong and that she doesn't have borderline? Was that the tack?
No. I'm a lot smarter these days. I never mentioned the BPD. I also released the video right before the testimony from Dr. Curry. So I was just mentioning love bombing through narcissistic abuse. Never, don't want to throw that fucking word around because that's when people start coming in. But on TikTok, I'll see a bit of it, or I look at another video that mentions borderline and people are like, oh, this isn't going to help with their stigma now.
Well, okay, so I'll say something in defense of borderlines. My humble opinion, and I've been at this, it's 9 years now. Especially women, not so with men. I'm going to talk about women. When we're talking about women diagnosed with borderline, I would estimate 80 to 85% of them are misdiagnosed. So ladies, you don't need to get defensive about this. That's not just my opinion. That is, it's mainstream. Well, there are plenty of mainstream clinicians who also would agree that it's massively overdiagnosed and massively misdiagnosed. One of the women who's working to change this is the woman who coined the concept of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, Professor Judith Hermann. She wants to get rid of the BPD diagnosis because it's so unhelpful. It's probably sexist. It's certainly dated, and it's massively overdiagnosed and misdiagnosed. Not so in men, in my experience, in my humble opinion. If a man comes and says, I got a clinical diagnosis for BPD, I'm gonna be very careful with him, because 9 times out of 10 they get it right. When women show up with CPTSD, whether they get a female clinician or a male clinician, that human being, that clinician, subjectively through their training will detect BPD, but it's not. It's just CPTSD. BPD is still rare. Like narcissism is still statistically quite rare, but they hand out BPD diagnoses, especially to adolescent women. A BPD diagnosis to an adolescent woman, an adolescent female girl, is nearly useless, because we're all BPD when we're adolescents, but women more so. It's not useful to give them that clinical stamp, because it's a nasty diagnosis. It's really bad. So what you'll get, and I know I've seen this on your channel more than on mine, is people with BPD who've attached to the diagnosis, trying to reclaim the space and be like, no, we're quiet borderlines, we're kind borderlines, we're not like that borderlines. It's like, no, you're not borderlines at all. You just have CPTSD. If I can resolve like 90% of your symptoms inside of 6 months of therapeutic work, you don't have a personality disorder. And we know that this happens with BPD. We know that people grow out of BPD. How's that a personality disorder? It's not. It's just overdiagnosed and it's misdiagnosed. Little rant there, but I just wanted to be clear so that we don't get as much crap here.
Yeah, but they'll still figure out a way.
They'll find a way to be offended.
Yeah,
but
that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah,
the people who insist on being offended, that's actually fragile narcissism. That's vulnerable narcissism. So we're still in the cluster B spectrum, but even that isn't. Those who insist on finding offense are better understood as fragile narcissists. I'm with Judith Hermann. I think it's a redundant diagnosis. You have, for me, you're either CPTSD, which means you can be an asshole. You can be an asshole. People are in pain, act like jerks. That's no problem. It's not fixed. Or you're a fragile, non-grandiose, non-classic narcissist. That's how, and that you can't work with. This you can. So yeah, the people who insist on taking offense, fragile narcissism. Do something else with your time, kids. Go to the gym.
Yeah. So if I were to come across a video that mentions the thing, there's that heavy clinging to this label and somehow keeping it like pure borderline, like unabusive, abusive personality disorder.
Not well, I mean, which exists. You can have a non-abusive personality disorder, but not in the cluster B. For it to be a cluster B personality disorder, you must be exploitative. You must be entitled. End of. That's not Richard's opinion. That's mainstream. That's completely mainstream.
Right. So in order to have a personality disorder within cluster B, by definition, it means you're at least a little abusive. So if you take
more than a little,
more than a little, a lot of abusive. So if you take the abusive out of the cluster B, then it's not that thing anymore. It's something else.
No,
you take cheese from a pizza, it becomes bread.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's the effort to reclaim borderline and turn it into something else is just silly. I mean, it's masturbatory. It's completely masturbatory. Why would you want a bad clinical diagnosis to be something good? What you're really saying is, I need that piece of identity because I have a very fragile sense of self. I like feeling like I have an answer. I understand all that. My God, I've been working in mental health since I was 21, professionally, on and off. I understand this moment of, thank God, you know, I've got dyslexia, I've got ADHD, I've got the thing. Thank God, now it can be understood and healed. Borderline, you must let go of it. It belongs to people who are very mentally sick. And I'll prove it right now. I can prove it right now. It means, people who go on about borderline, they don't even know what it means. Otto Kernberg coined the term borderline. You are only a borderline. Hear me now, please, kids. If you are on the borders of something. What? The borders of what? Full-blown psychosis. Full-blown. And according to Kernberg, to be borderline, you drift in. You go to the other domain. You go past the border and you become psychotic. So if you're not in psychotic rage, if you're not in psychotic terror, if you don't lose your grasp of reality, borderline is not an appropriate diagnosis for you. You may have trauma, you may have adrenophilia, you may be extremely anxious, you may have a whole raft of things, but let borderline go. Let it sail away from you. You don't need that in order to understand yourselves.
Yeah. You know about the cope?
Tell me about the cope.
It's like the new meme coming out when people are unwilling to face a certain logical conclusion or reality. It's called cope. People just like meme cope, right?
Cope, yeah.
And there's a lot of cope within this particular topic, but a lot of other things that I'm seeing, especially with this case coming out. So what we've seen in recent times, particularly only on social media, really, it's this like inverse mental gymnastics to resist feeling guilt or shame, whether it be, you know, body, the positivity thing, the you know, destigmatize X, Y, Z. Certain things come with that particular association of guilt and shame, and the only way to rid that is not through pragmatic means, but rather a mental exaggeration.
Yeah, what you're talking about is straight from psychoanalytic theory. These are called ego defenses. Classically, I think there are like 11 ego defenses. And what it is, it's really simple to understand. As human beings, we have a sense of self, and it works like a thermostat. I like air conditioning to be fairly cool. I like it around 21 degrees C. If it goes up, I'm uncomfortable. If it goes down, I'm uncomfortable. I have to do something to get back to where I want it. And that there's a thermostatic sort of sense of one's ego, one sense of self. So if I watch a Pierre XO video and he says, you don't have ADHD, which you tried once and you learn your lesson, or ADHD doesn't actually exist. Oh, and I go from 21 to 25. I'm now actually physically uncomfortable, somatically in my body, I'm uncomfortable. I don't have the skills to deal with that. I don't have critical thinking skills. I've not been trained to reason properly, and I can't self-soothe in a way. So what do? Well, I want to get back to 21. So I don't know, cancel Pierre or attack Pierre or tell Pierre to go fuck himself, because if he's wrong, then I get to keep the magic feather that allows me to maintain my sense of self. It's an extremely codependent, very fragile way of interacting with reality. And I think a lot of us human beings are entrained into that now. It makes us very weak, very, very weak, because we're very dependent on external sources for validation instead of having an internal locus of control, which is why I've been saying it since 2019, because I would be on the spectrum for borderline personality disorder. People say, oh, you're confident, therefore you're a classic narcissist. You know me, I'm not like that in real life. I'm an introverted guy, I'm quite sensitive, and I'm prone to emotional dysregulation and a labile sense of self. So clinically, if I was anything, I was borderline. But I let go of the clinging to a diagnosis because it's not going to save me. There's no transcendence there. It doesn't make me feel a better sense of self. If anything, you're clinging to something that can only really weaken you. And like you just said, it's mental acrobatics to justify post hoc shitty patterns of behavior. And if I may be so bold, cowardice.
Yeah, the labels will imprison, and if the more you read on a particular topic, the more you're going to think that you fit within that topic. It goes in with like basic. I mean, everyone has that thing where they have a stomach ache and they look it up on Google and it's like cancer and the removal of thyroid. And then everything becomes the removal of thyroid. And then you start looking at your stomach and it's like bulging more than usual. And you're like, I gotta rip out my own intestines, bruh. You know? I think the same goes obviously for mental disorders, and it's a lot easier to fall into it because it's not necessarily a physical sensation. It's within the abstract, and it's so much easier to latch on and camouflage within that territory.
100%. And what you're describing is catastrophic thinking. And who engages in catastrophic thinking? People who are traumatized. It's actually a survival mechanism to think that the worst is going to happen so that we can prepare for it. And so, yeah, they're using traumatized modes of thinking and feeling to try to understand very complicated psychiatric issues. Narcissism is a piece of piss to understand. So is psychopathy. So is histrionic. Borderline, that is a moving piece of clockwork. And when you start looking at borderlines in different states and in different contexts, the more you look at it, the more it starts to fragment, which is why I would say within the next 5 years, we won't have the term borderline personality disorder. It's too contingent a diagnosis. It's contingent on too many different factors, and it won't even exist. I just said I would be diagnosed for borderline. I also want to say I don't accept the diagnosis as valid. I want to reiterate that. Just because I'm saying I would get that clinical diagnosis, or I would have done in my early 30s, I don't accept it. The clinical diagnosis is nothing more. With borderline, they look with narcissism, they look for 9 things. With borderline, I think it's 11. And they do a laundry list of equally weighted traits. And if you tick 5 of 11, you got your clinical diagnosis of borderline. What are these? The 511 could be like self-destructive patterns of behavior, interpersonal turbulence, labile sense of self, fits of rage. Yeah, or maybe you're 16 years old, or you're traumatized, or you have PTSD or CPTSD, and these things are resolvable.
To bring it back to the case here, what about Amber would differentiate from a possible misdiagnosis, or if she actually is?
Well, again, Dr. Curry did a good job with this, because when she met Amber Heard for muffins, she took muffins to her house. The Amber Heard's legal team brought this up. She felt like Amber was trying to convince her that she had PTSD and that she had no personality disorder. But Dr. Curry clearly knows her business as far as the current DSM-5 diagnosis, diagnostic and statistical manual definitions and diagnostic tools would allow you to have. And she said Amber claimed that she had 19 out of 20 PTSD symptoms. And Dr. Curry commented, even the worst cases of PTSD, the most disabling cases of PTSD, don't have 19 out of 20. And she said when she asked her questions, Amber was trying to be cute. She'd be like, oh, I'm being asked if I'm a narcissist or if I'm borderline. And she would downplay. She would downplay her emotional dysregulation. She would downplay her misinterpretation of facts or a tendency towards abandonment anxiety. And Dr. Curry caught her. She caught her doing it. She was like, she doesn't have the PTSD that she claims. She does have the personality disorder that she claims that she does not have. So she's leaning out of personality disorder. Basically, Amber Heard is trying to present herself to a clinical psychologist who's an expert that she's not a predator, that she's prey. She's trying to convince somebody who knows better that she's a victim. And she got caught out.
So a common trait, I learned all these things from you, man. So you might as well just take over the entire podcast. But a common trait within the cluster B thing is to basically present yourself exactly how you want to be perceived. So you have this control fantasy of selecting exactly what the other person should
Yeah.
form their opinion of you to be. And yes, am I in
Yeah,
line?
you're right, and I must apologize now. I do go off on rants and stuff, but I just finished the book on this, guys. So I apologize if I'm like, well, yes, let me tell you about this thing I've just been studying. I'm a nerd for this stuff. So
No, of course,
you push your
obviously.
button on me, and I'm like, blah, 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 blah,
No,
blah.
of course. This is like where you're qualified to do this. I learned all this shit from you, dude. So
Right.
everyone buys book. Um, so yeah, so so Dr. Curry, first of all,
Yeah.
has actual experience, and she still, I think she claims that she still has current clients within the cluster B spectrum that she works with.
Yes.
People with
Yes.
diagnosed borderline, histrionic, NPD, all that above. So she has years and years under her belt working face to face with individuals that do cluster B things, such
Yes.
as attempt to control the other person's projection of them.
Mhm.
And first of all, 19 out of 20 PTSD. Do veterans from Vietnam also would they check for 19 out of 20, or would they just have a few key core elements that are held to the extreme? That's one thing there. But also, Dr. Curry is now used to seeing this. So
Yeah.
for her, it's probably like a glaring headlight at night, just watching the performance go down.
100%. This would be like a white belt thinking that they're sneaking up on a black belt in BJJ. You know, they're like, "Oh, I'm setting up an ankle lock." You don't, and the black belt's like, "Yeah, keep going, kid, keep going. See where this gets you." You know, so yeah, she would have seen all this coming. Look, when we say like borderline and histrionic, it's all really narcissistic psychopathy. So it's highly goal orientated behavior with zero empathy, built on a childish false image of who you are that you're desperately trying to project to the world to keep the attention on you. That's the histrionic part. And to prevent abandonment, which is where things can get a bit bullying and a bit nasty. That's where she's saying to Johnny Depp, you can't leave me, because if you leave me, you're a liar and you're breaking your word. You're breaking your honor. So he's obviously got something in relationships, like many men, many people do. I mustn't break my word. I mustn't lie. If I say I'm going to fight for the relationship, then I have to stay and fight for it. Because if that was me and somebody tried to say that to me, I'd be like, you could say whatever I like. I'm whatever you like. I'm leaving. So yes, she's trying desperately to control the perception of her. And yeah, absolutely. Like, if you're working with people like this, and God bless her if she is, because I did it for 4 years and I found it completely exhausting. It made me physically sick and I had to stop. I've not done it for years. Then yeah, she would see this stuff coming, no problem. But with the point I was going to make, sorry guys, a narcissistic psychopathic type always overestimates their intelligence and they underestimate the intelligence of other people, because that's a child. She's 5 years old. She's like, I'm so sneaky. I got the lies. I know what I'm doing. This woman's a doctor. I don't give a shit about degrees. I've heard clients say this. Your degree means nothing. You've never seen a case like me. Every narcissistic client says the same shit. They're the robotic ones. They're the predictable ones. They're the childlike ones. An adult who's switched on sees this stuff coming, no problem whatsoever. Amber Heard has overestimated her ability to con other people. And she really does believe that other people are stupid. She believes Depp is stupid. She believes the judge is stupid. She'll believe that the doctor is stupid. And this is where they come undone. They always come undone because they overestimate themselves.
Within the realm of the abstract, stuff that isn't physical, practical, anything that deals with word fluctuations and circular logic and a lot of these things that are unprovable but can somehow get there through some backflip, they thrive. And I'm sure Amber, especially within the acting world and all of these other things that she was involved with, that is all that. It's all that. Like, I lived in LA. You've worked with celebrities.
Yeah.
You can see how much somebody would benefit if they floated within this territory, because this is all about networking, pulling the right strings to try to convince somebody to do that, to do this. And there's nothing necessarily concrete with that entire mechanism. So within this world, the more floating within abstract and manipulation, the more likely you're willing, or the more likely you could succeed because of that. But if that same person gets a heavy, intensive analysis under hardcore boundaries and lines, such as a courtroom
Yeah.
or another metaphor, like in the actual boxing ring, you
Yes.
can't abstract your way out of those things.
Yes, you can't bullshit your way out of reality. There's some expression that's going around on the internet at the moment. I'm gonna butcher it. It's something like, you can live in denial of reality if you want to, but you can't live in denial of the consequences of being in denial of reality. So the bill comes due. You can hide inside your childish fantasy and think you're the queen of the castle as much as you like, but when you seek to character assassinate and extort one of the most beloved actors in Hollywood in generations, like when Johnny Depp dies, may that be in a long time in the future after a long and healthy life, he'll be remembered with the greats. He's beloved. What an error. What an error. And we're seeing that now because people are crawling out the woodwork. They're climbing over themselves, over each other, to speak on his behalf. People who don't know him, maids, security guards, random cops, random people who didn't even know who he was, who've been questioned, are all saying, yeah, this guy drank too much. He was probably taking drugs, but he was not abusive in these scenarios. There's no independent witness that has come forward and said, yeah, we saw what we thought looked like a narcissistic, bullying, psychopathic man exploiting a younger woman and doing horrible. No independent witness of any credibility has come forward to say that. So yeah, she's made a big mistake. She's made a big mistake. She will lose and he will win, but he will have gone through hell to get there in the end.
Yeah, for sure, man. And like you were saying before, especially during the time where she wrote that article in 2016 with the Me Too thing sprouting, a lot of that was the resurgence, or the new surgence of this rewarding the abstract, whether it be good or worse. You know, during this time, a lot of people took the situation, and whoever could reward themselves from it basically did.
Yeah.
And you know, people that actually had justice served, maybe there were a lot of people that were actually abused and they had justice served, but then at the same time, people that are really, really good within the abstract use that to their advantage as well.
100%, 100%. And I think like it's good that you're reminding people, like, you can play in the world of the abstract. That's the world of play. That's the world of role play. But a courtroom is not the world of role play. I mean, you can try, but you know, eventually we've got audio recordings, we've got clinical psychologists, and there are big consequences. To come back to the Australian point, I was just racking my brains as we were talking, like, why the hell did I think she was Australian? Years ago, they took animals on a private jet into Australia. Australians are crazy about this. And I walked away from reading whatever article I read that she had tried to use her Australian citizenship as a justification for bringing the pets into the country. So I walked away from that going, oh, she's an Australian, but apparently she's not. Apologies again for my error on that one, but that's what it was. It was about the pets going into Australia. But again, you know, that's psychopathic behavior. There are rules, and the rules are there for a reason. Yeah, but they don't apply to me. We don't have to do that. We're wealthy, we're famous, we can do something completely different. This is standard narcissistic psychopathic behavior. Saying it's borderline, saying it's histrionic, this is just more nuance. Did you know, by the way, that you just mentioned the acting world and the celebrity world? Histrionic comes from a Latin word, or maybe it's from Greek. I think Etruscan, actually, which means actor. Histrio of histrionic, a histrio in Etruscan meant actor. So it's actually the core of the acting psychology is to be histrionic and to desire to be the center of attention at all times.
Yes, yes. And Yeah, and then I think the current cultural circumstances with the advent of oversaturated social media, in a weird way, it is an actor's artist's utopia that is also a dystopia. I mean, that's the concept of borderline. You can't exactly diagnose it because the
Yeah,
internet is both amazing and fucking terrible at the same
yeah,
time. And it's not like it fluctuates from one side to the other. It somehow simultaneously exists and you can't define it into words. So there is kind of like that histrionic borderline element with
yeah,
how the internet functions. And now that
absolutely.
this thing is like oversaturated everything, it rewards anybody who is really good with it, or at least knows how to almost disciplinary usage of it.
I think people are in the cluster B spectrum. If they're if they're moderately emotionally stable, should be the ones who dominate the internet space. They should be, because they have all the tools that's required for it. I mean, sorry, not the internet space, the social media space specifically. The social media space rewards this kind of, it rewards histrionic behavior.
Hmm.
And if you can create a spectacle, if you can induce emotion in people, if you can be manipulative, if you can lie, if you can present a false self, you'll be rewarded hand over fist for that. It's those of us who stutter step and are like, maybe I'm not that fucking amazing, or maybe I shouldn't be doing this, or maybe there's a negative consequence to me doing this. We're the ones who suffer.
I mean, of course, like to put yourself out on the internet just to be received by a bunch of strangers knowingly about to probably troll you in one way, that takes a massive amount of blind confidence or a bit of grandiosity to even start with that, and then
100%.
to somehow convince yourself to keep going, and all these things too. I mean, thank God I decided to do this during the peak of my cluster B growing up, you know,
Yeah.
because nowadays I could never, I don't know if I could have the same, thing, and
Yeah.
this is a part of maturing, obviously, but
Yeah.
yeah, just throw that in there.
Yeah. No, well, and that's why I said before, this is one of the many, like, this is not my opinion. People go look it up. I mean, just look at the Wikipedia page for borderline personality disorder, scroll down to where it says controversies, and just take 5 minutes to read that. This is the kind of argument that makes it a pretty invalid diagnosis. Amber Heard has problems. I'm not saying her diagnosis is meaningless. It's meaningful. But BPD, in and of itself, as a discrete personality disorder, is losing ground every day because of what you just said. When we are younger, we're attention seeking, we're emotionally labile, we're manipulative, we have less empathy. We're all cruel little bastards when we're adolescents because we're narcissistic.
I just thought of something. By you mentioning that, it's very common to see adolescents up until 21, whatever, young early 20s to have
More.
more, right? Well, especially now for sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the whole cliche of celebrities losing their fucking mind, or people who are famous or public losing their goddamn mind, because that usually happens when they're younger, right? So you're
yeah.
already within that histrionic behavioral tendency, that
Yes,
cluster B thing, and then all of a sudden you're getting rewarded from it, and then people
yes,
and then you're making money
yeah,
from it. So
yeah.
you're kind of set in this perpetual momentum of continuing that cluster B behavior that was already kind of natural with adolescence, but now it's like you have a real reason to keep going.
And I think what you just said is going to be, this I hope is a start point. I hope Amber Heard gets therapy. I hope that Johnny Depp gets therapy for what's happened to him, and I hope they both move on with their lives. But the rest of us, we need to think very carefully about what we've witnessed here, and with the Will Smith and Jada Smith scenario. What kind of a world are we creating? What kind of a world do we want to live in? People think this stuff is cute. They think it's harmless. They think it doesn't, oh, it's just people dancing on TikTok, or it's just people. It's really not. It's much more sinister than that. It is warping people's minds. And it's the thing that I find myself coming back to nowadays, because as you know, I'm on the internet less and I'm in the real world more. And I'm like, wow, the disparity. I'm even seeing it myself, where the internet has gaslit me into thinking the world is just full of polarized, hostile, crazy people, full of opinions, looking to attack somebody. No, it's not. Everybody's just going about their business, largely speaking.
Yeah.
But the voices of the internet, it's almost like a cluster B magnet and a cluster B magnifier, a cluster B amplifier. The people who want to be front and center shouting the loudest are the sickest. And the stuff that they're amplifying, their points of view, their opinions are the sickest points of view, broadly speaking. Not always, but broadly speaking, that seems to me to be the case.
Of course, of course. And like the internet, it's a bit of both. For me, I grew up with a USB drive stuck in my fucking eyeball, you know, so it's such a core element of how I've developed. But what I've recently figured out is a disciplined use of it, as if you're on a strict diet. Like for me, I can't just quit food. I have to be very, very selective and like literally put on it like some sort of tunnel vision and absorbing specific content within the mission that I currently have. And those voices, I mean, it's like a emulated schizophrenia.
Yes.
At one point in the past, are you allowed to get fucking 1,000 opinions all at once yelling at you? Was there any other situation that everybody specifically gets to send 500 differing opinions at once to an individual where they have to absorb applauding you and also saying fuck you?
And not just differing, but so much. Like I don't you know me, I don't use Twitter. People who follow me, I don't use Twitter. But occasionally I'm reading articles about Twitter, and then Twitter's being purchased, and people have said this and people have said that. And when I read the screenshots of people's tweets, I'm like, this is awful. This is not how adults should talk to each other. Everything is dripping with sarcasm, irony, nastiness, provocation, loathing, like raw loathing, just absolute hatred. Oh my God damn, guys, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? That's an addiction. And I think, you know, bringing it back to the Amber Heard Johnny Depp case, you see that with these relationships. There's a cyclical nature. You get fed, you get your narcissistic supply, then it drops off, then you need more. How do you get it? Through abuse, through abusing people, by being aggressive, by being nasty. That creates a spike of adrenaline, both in the abuser and in the abusee, and they're both getting addicted to it. Call this trauma bonding.
Wow, how convenient of you to bring up addiction, because you finally watched Requiem for a Dream. And
because you asked me to on the last Tentacle Quest. Why did you make me do that?
Because you like those type of movies, bro. You like the ones that really like stab you, dude.
Well, first of all, I would say like Requiem for a Dream went right past me. I don't know how. I don't know. Maybe it was because it had Jared Leto in it. He does a great acting job in that film. I take back what I said in the last Tentacle Quest on. He can act. I've not seen him act well in the last 6 movies I've seen him in, but the boy can act. He's because he was young in that movie, and he really can act. Yeah, young and hungry. It's easily, if you're looking for like drug movies, it's easily as good as Trainspotting, which was a great movie and a great interpretation of Irvin Welsh's book. It's one of the most disturbing films I've seen, and it cemented my perception that Darren Aronofsky is a very brave filmmaker and a very sadistic one with his audience. And I compare it, the only other one I've seen of his is Mother exclamation mark, with Javier Bardem and Jennifer Lawrence in it, which was brutal to watch. It brutalizes you as the audience member. It's tough. God, it's tough.
Yeah, it really is like an assault on your psyche. Yeah. And that's exactly what he was going for. I'm going to somehow try to tie it in with the Amber Heard Johnny Depp thing, because I'm pretty sure that's what people are tuning in now as well to hear. But you're bringing up addiction and addiction to drama. And first of all, cluster Bs love that shit. It's their drug of choice. The cluster Bs can do substance abuse as well, obviously, but oftentimes the the high that you get from introducing another individual within your spectrum. It's kind of
Yes.
like a collective drug trip of adrenaline. Because like
Yes.
one thing to have adrenaline on your own, it's another thing to skydive with a group of people and bring your fucking family with you, right?
Right.
So
Yeah,
with
definitely.
with that being said, like, and you're describing social media and the propensity for people to get those spikes of adrenaline through conflict, through drama. It magnetizes people that are within the spectrum here. And I'll tell you, during my fucking last year, man, it really felt like a real drug withdrawal. Because
Yeah,
I have,
you've acted like you're going cold turkey on something, like a
dude,
long cold turkey. I think coming off heroin would have been easier for you.
dude, seriously, man, because it's one thing to like come off an actual substance, but it's to come off of something that cemented your social validation and
Yeah,
your identity for a
yeah,
long period of time. I was like really slipping. By the way, I'm doing a little better, guys. Applause for me. Yay.
yeah,
1 week sober, wristband. Okay,
yeah.
so
I'm Pierre XO, and I'm addicted to cyberspace, and I've been sober for. You've been sober now 365 days, something like that.
yeah, man, I've really taken a step back from how I used social media and the internet. I don't want to
Mm,
just completely point fingers exactly at social media, but it's a huge component of it. But
mm,
how I was using it was very fucked up, man.
mm,
And that propensity to find drama, to get the clicks or to spicing things up, to connect with people,
mm.
the drama was always a core key element of it. I mean, it's the whole reason why the Amber Heard Johnny Depp thing is being talked about now, but that being said, it really felt like an actual drug withdrawal, real physical symptoms. My stomach was fucked up. You were here when that shit was
Yeah,
going down.
yeah,
Like it was really fucked. But yeah, I would put it hand in hand for sure.
definitely. I think you know the drug analogy is extremely useful. Who's the addict in Johnny Depp Amber Heard scenario? He's addicted to something. I mean,
Yeah.
he's got, certainly if he wasn't before he met her, he is addicted now, and he will be addicted to a kind of humiliating abuse. That's the nature of trauma bonding. I don't know what got him involved. Like, there would have been something else previously that made him susceptible to that. She's addicted to abusing. She's addicted to betrayal and deceit. An interesting thing, this is just my thing, this is not mainstream. I like to think about the different personality disorders in the cluster B as addicted to different drugs. So narcissism is kind of addicted to dominance, addicted to getting one over on people. We call this narcissistic supply. If they achieve getting one over on somebody, if they achieve dominance, they get narcissistic supply. With a psychopath, depending on the type of psychopath, if they can frighten people, also dominate people, but with less of a need for vanity, then that's psychopathic supply. Borderline personality disorder is like narcissism and psychopathy together, but the supply that they get through dominance, betrayal, and deception must be tinged with pity. So they need a different type, a different brand of heroin. It needs a little bit. People need to pity them, need to see them as the biggest victim in the room.
Yeah, it's
And
it's
with
more so when the thing starts coming down, right? So you have the high of the drug, but they like the feeling where it starts declining a little bit.
yes, I really do. I really believe that. Which is, yeah, as Pierre's just said. So like a normal addiction, you want the spike, but there is also an addiction with borderline, particularly to the depletion, because that's where the real sense of self comes in. That's where they strongly feel themselves present, is as they are suffering, as they are nailed to the cross, because no matter what you do, they're going to see it as a persecution. You can make them a cheese sandwich and they'll see it as a persecution because they need to be persecuted. And with the histrionic, the supply, the drug of choice, is attention. But to get that histrionic diagnosis, it really needs to be sexual. There must be some frisson of erotic desire within that supply that they're getting. This is just my dumb thing. I like to think this way because I find it helps me to remember. So when I'm working with a client and I'm trying to figure out what they're dealing with or what they're personally experiencing, I think of it as a drug. I think of it as an addiction. Everybody talks about narcissistic supply, but nobody talks about psychopathic, histrionic, and borderline supply. And I think that's a useful thing to do, because when you get your narcissistic supply, you get your bump, you go into narcissistic elation, but then there's narcissistic depletion. So as you've just said, Pierre, with the borderline, as they're going into depletion, that may be more thrilling for them than the moments of pure elation, which is why I said before, borderline is quite complicated to understand. It's clockwork that shifts as you look into it. It's contingent on so many different external factors. When you listen to Sam Vaknin, and he'll say, well, the borderline will be a narcissist in this state, and then she experiences this moment and she instantly turns into a psychopath, and then she gets what she wants there, and then she drops down into, it gets very, very complicated. But it's a good way of thinking about it.
Yeah, here's my physical metaphor that I would actually piece together. So it's more so enjoying the chase as opposed to the actual peak of the dragon, the chasing the dragon thing. It's because when they get the peak, that's not what they actually want. They want the consistent desire to get the thing. And that consistent desire needs to be full of struggle, basically drama, conflict, and struggle. And the moment that they actually say that they get that thing up there is when everything explodes. Or everything explodes, because they need to consistently be back down there.
Well, that reminds me of Requiem for the Dream, where you have Jared Leto and the lovely Jennifer Connelly, which was extremely distracting for me to watch, because I was just like, my God. Yeah, that was distracting, watching Jennifer Connelly on screen. But when they're hustling for their fix, that would be the borderline at their peak, is the hustle. It's the desperation. It's the struggle to gain, and the loss even. And you see this with certain types of psychopaths as well. They're actually addicted to loss. So there's gamblers who've said this of themselves. The thrill of winning is one thing, but the thrill of losing can be even higher, which would, if we strictly enforce the DSM cluster B, that would put them squarely between borderline and psychopathy, because they want to lose. They like is not right, but you know what I'm saying.
There's that I think he's a millionaire artist, David Cho, the Korean dude. Like, he was a fucking contemporary art rock star, basically, and he explained his crazy fucking life, dude. What a fucking life that guy lived. And during his gambling addiction, he explained just that. He was like, I didn't want to fucking win another $1 million. I purposely put 10 million down on a hand of Texas Hold'em because I wanted to fucking lose everything, because I hate myself. And like, oh, it's a crazy shit, bro. I'm like, God damn. Like, you need to go that far, dude. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, when these personalities get the resources, the stakes get higher and higher and higher. And I think you can see that with the Amber and Johnny thing. Yeah. Because I mean, I don't know fucking Amber, obviously, but I can imagine if we're correct within this circumstance of what the personality disorder is and stuff, she probably still loves every second of it. Loves, not like makes her happy, but it's still something going on.
Yes, maybe we could say like a masochistic love. And remember, as we said before, like, borderline supply needs to be tinged with pity. Self-pity can do it. Imagine losing a court case that she's filed against him for $100 million, losing your reputation, losing your career, just being the Johnny Depp's wife to just a pariah, just completely hated. That's the real depths. And there's going to be real masochistic pleasure in that, because of what a pitiable creature she will be after that. I mean, what we're talking about now could really trigger some people, and I'm aware of that. But this is how it functions, folks. This is why, when you're trying to understand abusive relationships, self-destruction, alcoholism, drug use, gambling, part of it is, let me be the worst object, in psychiatric terms, imaginable, completely rejected, completely unlovable, completely humiliated. Oh, the masochistic joy of it.
Yeah, so it gives me a reason to keep going, right? Like, I need this to feel like I am someone by how much it's done to me.
Yes, which back to psychoanalysis again, but not Freud and not Jung, but Adler. where he made this incredible assertion, like, mind melting assertion, which is the story that you're living, whatever it is actually the story that you want to be living. How dare you? I'm miserable. I'm depressed. My wife. How dare you say that I want this? Okay. Are you brave enough to look? Are you brave enough to gaze into your own shadow and look? Even just to philosophically explore the possibility that there's gain in this pain, that there's some gratification or pleasure in all this destruction and all this loathing and hatred and waste.
Yeah, I mean, look at spoiled, rich children all over the world. What do they do to themselves?
Yeah.
Because they have nothing to hold on to. The struggle, the drama, the conflict that makes them feel like they're worth something. A lot of those people just fucking self-destruct. I grew up around a ton of them. I was in Southern California. Every kid was dying from an oxycodone overdose.
I mean, Southern California is, in my life experience, saying nothing bad against Southern Californians, of course, but in my life experience of traveling many places and staying many places, I would say is the epicenter of this. Mm-hmm. Give me everything and I will throw it all into the ocean. What's the ocean there? Is it it's not the Atlantic. What is it? The Pacific. I'll piss inheritances worth millions, parents who will send you to any school. They'll buy you into an Ivy League school. They've got real estate businesses. Or in short, you just take it. Just take the fucking thing. Just put a suit on and go to work for 25 hours a week. No. I'd rather just get drunk and take drugs and piss it all away.
Yeah, the fucking extent that I would see those kids go. I never understood it growing up. I was a very not conservative, but kind of nerdy-ish, overly cautious person. Just seeing these white kids that are just so fucking rich, doing the craziest shit. And two of the druggies that I was kind of around, I wouldn't say we're friends necessarily. I was around them. They both overdosed in the same age, 27, in the same year, a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And they didn't even know each other. They didn't fucking know each other.
I really
around each other. I mean, sorry.
I really, really think it's not a psychologist who came up with the term. It was a defense lawyer for a kid who did a mass shooting. He came up with the term affluenza instead of influenza, affluenza. Who's the kid? He was like the original incel, and he shot up his classmates out of pure resentment because he couldn't get the girls.
Most people don't say his name because it's you don't want.
Oh, okay. Okay, but everybody knows who I'm talking about. So his defense lawyer described him as suffering from affluenza. Maybe because it's associated with that case, we don't want to use the adjective. But in the same way that journalists come up with terms and we use them, we should use this term more. It's meaningful. It's a good describer. We are, as a culture, all of us suffering from affluenza, but then you see these pockets of pure destruction. Like you said, name the ethnicity. It's in Southern California, it's mainly very wealthy white kids. And I personally am dealing with an effect of the Southern Californian affluenza case. I have to pick up the pieces from this thing right now in my daily life. For what? For what? Why are we doing this? You've been given everything, but you don't want that. And maybe the conversation should be, hey, as human beings, we don't want to be given everything. Maybe that's a form of if not abuse, a boundary break, or it's just not right. It's just not right to give your kids everything. You shouldn't do that. They should face, as human beings growing, they should face challenges and they have to overcome them and they need to get stronger. I don't know what the answers are, but I know it's a conversation that we need to have. And the Amber Heard case, I think, really highlights things like that.
I just watched something very recently talking about the idea of necessary struggle, and it's almost the word abuse has been used a lot here, and I don't want to go that far to say, but it's not a good thing to strip a young human out of struggle.
No,
it's not abuse, but it is something along the lines around the territory to strip someone the potential of going through character building struggle?
Let's say it's a transgression. It's a transgression. You shouldn't give people too much. It's really not healthy. Like you mentioned before, certain celebrities. I think if a celebrity comes up too fast with too much for too little, like they know they released some dumb auto-tune song about somebody's booty hole or something. They know that. We're not, like, as human beings, that's not, you don't win the kingdom because you wrote some stupid song in an afternoon, or you didn't even write it. You're just the one, you just have the pretty enough face to mouth it while somebody else wrote the lyrics for you. It's not healthy. And it's not a good evolutionary match for the creature we are. Throughout our evolutionary history, we fought, we bled, we toiled to get boundaried pieces of advantage, not infinite unboundaried advantage for nothing.
That's great. Add that on what do you call it when you add notes to a book afterwards?
Oh, okay.
An
annotation.
annotation.
Yeah, annotations or an afterword or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Like what did you say? Like we're evolved only for boundaried elements of advantage, not complete advantage.
No. I mean, look at martial arts schools. You work really hard and then you go up a belt and you get one tag and then a little bit more. The military is the same. You work damn hard and you get a little bit more privilege, a little bit more recognition. You don't just show up one day with clean boots and become, sergeant major or, a captain or something. It doesn't happen. And what would happen if we did that? Well, those people wouldn't know how to handle the responsibility of the elevated position they're in because they didn't win it. They've not won anything.
And then how to keep it. Yeah. And then what happens when they lose it?
I mean, so, it's kind of a Patrice O'Neill point that I'm going to make now. I don't know what age Amber Heard was, but I think she was in her 20s. I don't want to make another mistake with it. I think she was in her 20s when she was given the front door keys to a multi-millionaire, highly desirable Hollywood legends houses, plural houses. Is that good? Is that a good thing?
I mean, imagine you are a 20-year-old, girl or not, whatever. You're 20 though. You're 20.
Yeah.
And you're with people like Elon Musk. You cheated on Johnny Depp with Elon Musk, James Franco, and whoever the fuck else within that thing.
Is that real? Did she cheat on Johnny Depp with Elon Musk?
Allegedly, but there are photos of them that leaked.
Wow, she really is a psychopath.
I mean, dude, if you were a 20-year-old with a little understanding of the world and then you just fucking you're flipping the most of the most and cheating on the most with the most.
Yeah.
What? Dude, that you could not exist healthily after that.
No, there was a time, it's a long time ago now, when Justin Bieber took a kicking in the media, in the mainstream media, and comics were making jokes about him, and because he was being a bit of a dick and pissing in public places and being abusive. And I was like, yeah, you shouldn't do that. But for the grace of God go we all. How the hell, at the time I was in my 30s, I was like, if you gave me that level of success and an opportunity overnight, I don't know that I wouldn't maybe be rude or be a bit of a bellend sometimes.
Actually, it's a signifier that Justin Bieber is probably one of the most well-adjusted celebrities, considering the extent of what he did.
Yeah,
was pee in a bucket somewhere and then crash a car.
Right, that's it. That's it.
I've crashed 2 fucking cars and I piss all over the place. And I'm not a celebrity, bro.
It was insane. I was like, this is I'm not going to say he's a child, but this is a young man in a world that all the journalists, all the comics, you have some level of fame, but you're not him. You don't know what it's like. And I'm not, poor boo-hoo, poor him. Let's just be calm, be rational, try to be kind, try to have a little understanding and let him grow up. and he did
Yeah.
grow up. He actually, you know,
But the thing is,
turned back to God.
the thing is, people do know what it's like. Everyone's pissed somewhere they're not supposed to at one point because of
Right.
some urgent thing or for fun. Someone's accidentally fucked up a car at one point, and if you haven't,
Yeah.
get off of Twitter and do it. You know,
Let him without sin cast the first stone. It becomes a kind of collective scapegoating, and I think there are elements in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case when I'm looking at the public response to this where you can see resentment, you can see class resentment, you can see wealth resentment, you can see fame resentment. There's a lot. And these are the elephants in the room that nobody wants to say because it doesn't match my virtuous sense of self or the virtuous avatar I'm trying to present online. But yes, there's clearly massive envy and resentment going on.
yeah. I mean, the amount of cope these days, man. It's like the first thing that I see. Sometimes most people are on Johnny Depp's side. Like almost everything that I read is pretty siding with Depp. But if it's trying to like somehow add a question to the other side, but like, what mean words did he say? What
Right.
about these tabloids? You know, what about the texts? And then it's like, meanwhile, those are just alleged things that aren't actually played out. And then on the other side, there's actual like cigarette burns and like cut off fingers and stuff. One interesting thing was I just wanted to kind of like boop with the water. I was like, narcissistic abuse this year. Jada Pinkett Smith, Will Smith, Amber Heard, Johnny Depp. Is toxic femininity a thing? Oh, probably not. You know,
Listen, you be careful.
I said that in the video just to, you know, I just gotta see what happens. And then no one's getting pissed, but the cope, bro. The cope of like, well, you know, I mean, I understand what you're saying about toxic femininity, but except it wouldn't be portrayed in such a way because toxic masculinity actually mentions about unhealthy competition between men that's done in a physically aggressive manner. But then toxic femininity would be done differently through some sort of victim thing. And then, so I'm like, okay, so Amber Heard's being toxic.
So you have a lot of 20-year-old humanities majors just repeating stuff that their professors have told them, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, okay, so then Amber Heard is being toxically masculine. Like, well, I mean, you know, and then certain people are just like, oh, but we don't have to classify it to genders. It's being toxic is toxic. I was like, that's what I've been saying. Like,
that's what I've been saying for years.
It came up. That's what everyone's saying is what if it's just toxic? You're the one that put the masculinity label on it a few years ago. Fucking shit.
But it's different when it doesn't apply to me. When it applies to me, it's no. There's no gender here. Every I posted a meme about it, and I got comments back saying, "This isn't about toxic femininity. This is about toxic people." I'm like, yes. You can say that to me if you can prove that you posted on 5 different posts about toxic masculinity exactly those words. Yeah, if you didn't, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, what happened to all of the men like 4 years ago that said it's not toxic masculinity, it's just people being toxic? What were they called? They were fucking slandered like up the butthole. Like, what do you mean you can't live with the fact that toxic masculinity is? I'm like, okay, now you're saying that it doesn't. Gender's not a thing here. Okay, all right.
Yeah. Suddenly the rules have changed because it's gone the other way. Which, by the way, is an ego defense in the psychoanalytic tradition, and it's a narcissistic ego defense, which is if I can't win the game based on these rules that I established and I've been playing by, you suddenly start winning, I'll either change the rules or I'll end the game altogether. That's a narcissistic ego defense. You can't do that. If we're going to have toxic masculinity, we have to have toxic femininity. It's nonsense to claim that there's something intrinsically wrong with one gender, one race, one group of people, one nationality. It's not okay. It's not going to function.
Listen, Richard, toxic masculinity exists, but if it's a woman being toxic, then it's just toxicity. There's no toxic femininity.
I feel like I have been educated here today. And
did I educate you?
You educated me.
Did you do your research?
I went away and I learned. I questioned myself and I learned.
Did you see the video I posted? You don't even have to watch it, but like the title, I wrote Jordan Peterson was right on some other YouTuber.
No, I didn't see that. Are you crazy? What are you
listen,
doing?
this is what
I
did,
could do
bro.
that. I didn't know you could do that.
No. Here's the context, right?
Right.
There's this YouTube influencer. His name is H3H3. You might have heard of him once. He did Vape Nation.
Right.
He did.
I have heard of him now.
Yeah, he did a podcast with Jordan Peterson. They were like friends on it. Fast forward a few years, H3's like takes are becoming more increasingly like crazy woke. And now I think he did this thing or trying to cancel some other competitor, got rid of his sponsors because they harassed the shit out of him. And now he lost his sponsors because he did some joke about being a top or a bottom.
Okay.
Some shit. And now he offended gay people here, so he's a homophobe.
Oh, he's not gay himself. Okay.
Yeah, so now he's a homophobe, and then all his sponsors dropped him.
Ooh.
You know, boo-hoo. And Jordan Peterson basically like tweeted him before the whole thing, like a year ago, was like, the very mob you wish to please will eat you alive gleefully.
So clean up your damn room, bucko.
Yeah. So all I did at the end of the video was just like, you know, what, regardless of what you think about Jordan Peterson, he predicted this very thing. And I read the tweet, which was literally a 5-second segment, you know, and I put Jordan Peterson was right in the title. A lot of people were like, okay, that's cool. Yeah. But like the ones that got mad, they got fucking mad. And it's like, just because the mouth that delivered those words, regardless of the content or how truthful, just because it's from his mouth, it should not be taken in any way positive.
It couldn't possibly have any validity, no matter what. This is a hysterical response. It's a boundaryless, critical thought, reasoning-free response. Like this is a traumatized style of thinking. It's thinking in absolutes. You couldn't possibly accept it because of the identity of the person who said the thing. That's just not. There's no future in that. There's not a reasonable way for adults to conduct themselves.
Yes, exactly. Anyways, I just had to throw that out there. Back to Amber and Johnny and Requiem for a Dream.
Well, I'm going to have to go soon, sir. I have a family due 2 miles that way, which I need to go to. Should we maybe throw it open to some questions?
Let's do it, Brie.
Let's do it. Does anybody have any questions about anything we discussed today? We have 777 watches right now.
777 for once. It's usually 666. We're turning to the light side, and I'm feeling
this is
better,
the light
dude.
side. This is we're on the side of Yeshua now.
Yes, I like it.
Tinkerbell says, "No, Richie, stay." Abandonment anxiety is felt by all. There are 2 very cute, very small boys who will be asking about now, "Where's Uncle Richard? Where's Uncle Richard?" So you have to think about them, guys.
Do women brag about their toxicity?
Do you use TikTok?
Do you know what happens in all women gossip circles? Not all of them.
Do you have female friends?
Yeah, not all of them, but you know, just saying.
No. Yeah, I have female friends who brag to me about it, and they know what I do for a living. They're joking, though. I think.
You did what with the husband's mistress?
Oh, yeah.
Short answer, yes. LOL, it's gross. Okay, any other questions, my friends? Dude, you know who I saw today? First of all, your clone that looked exactly like you walking around.
That's spooky. You should post that on Instagram. There is a clone of me in Prague.
You should post it. It's you.
I'll post it. I'll post it on Instagram. Because I have a friend from Prague who said that her friend saw me. She was like, "I know you're in Prague." I was like, "I'm not." Well, my friend saw you. And I was like, "Whatever. Your friends need glasses." And then Pierre sent me a picture of a dude. It's me.
Yeah. Saw that today. A few hours later, I fucking saw the ex-prime minister of Czech Republic, Andrew Babiš. It's in my Instagram feed right now.
Oh, I think I did see that. Was that Babish behind
That
it? I
was
scanned through it
Babiš.
real quick. Whoa. You saw Babish today.
He was like exiting a building, 2 bodyguards, and no one was like taking photos of shit. It's fucking Andre Babish. Like,
Babish, the man himself. I didn't even know he was the ex-prime minister. I thought he was still in power.
Bruh, like, he is a figure very equivalent to like Trump or maybe even Putin out here. Like, he's not necessarily well received, and he's very, very divisive. Let's say that much. And just like imagine you're walking around and you see Trump behind you or Putin behind you, and you're just like, what the fuck? It felt so surreal, dude.
Only in Prague. Because people are so much more polite and conservative and mind your own business. They just wouldn't say anything.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm just like, oh my god, I gotta get this, bro. This is insane.
I think he saw you do it, like in the photos. Like,
oh, for sure. He stared straight at me, dude. And I was like, dude, he knows that I exist, bro. I'm probably on a list now, man.
Yeah, you're on a list.
Oh shit. All right. Any other questions, or you gotta go, Richard?
I need to go soon. Yeah, must.
What would your vision of a healthy society look like?
One where I am the benevolent dictator at the top of it with total power over everyone.
I think there's no such thing as a healthy. I think, well, technically, a healthy society isn't a utopian one. It's rife with the same amount of struggles that should work together to keep the engine running. You know? Something like that.
A bit of cohesion, a group sense that even though we don't all agree with each other, we're all on the same page, and we want the society or nation that we're in to do well, because that's the boat that we're sailing the seas on, rather than us all punching holes in the boat and just saying screw you and tearing it all down.
It should be like tension. You know what I mean? Like, in order to make this shape, you have to push together. So that's the conflict, but just enough to keep the thing up.
Things got very sexual there for me for a second.
But that's life, man.
Right.
It's very libidinous.
It's libidinous. Just enough tension and friction to keep it up and keep it going.
That's it, dude. And the baby pop out. So for Johnny and Amber, what do you think the answer is for them? Stay away from each other, man.
Johnny, there is no answer for Amber that exists outside of. I really don't think that somebody else posted DBT would help her. Me personally, I'm pretty pessimistic with cases like this. I don't think therapy would touch that human being. I don't think that human being is interested in having the vulnerability, courage, and self-reflection that therapy takes. You have to be tough to go through therapy, and you have to be humble, and she doesn't have it. Johnny needs to, probably already has, just give up. Everybody who's in an abusive relationship, give up despair, give up any hope that this person's going to get better, that they're going to love you, that you were with a real person. You were with the semblance, with an avatar of a person. They never existed. Cry, scream, roll around on the floor, grieve, and then just get on with your life and go find somebody else. We don't have that long on the planet, man.
Mm-hmm. Whenever you make videos of suicidal problems, can you share tips on what one can do to change or what you could think be better? I mean, sure, but I don't know. Like, I think part of the process is kind of diving deeper within the circumstances before you even begin to make a hypothesis on the solution.
Definitely. It's once solutions can't be spoon-fed. They can't come from political leaders, cult leaders, YouTube influencers, psychologists. They have to come from individuals choosing to face their responsibilities and act like adults. We all individually have to do our part, and we shouldn't pretend like it's hard. It's not. All of the answers are simple. The answers to the problems in your life are local, and they're there in front of you. Just look around and be like, what would a common sense solution to this be? Okay, let's do that. We're in this game where we're pretending it's complicated because it absolves us of the responsibility of doing anything. Kierkegaard said that about Christianity. He said that we as Christians pretend it's very, very complicated because if we accepted how simple it was, we wouldn't get to have our devious pleasures in life.
You know, one thing I've learned is, like, in this last year or so, is like, your particular personality temperament that enjoys that complexity and struggle and whatever else, just make sure your outlet is safe enough to explore that. Find a place that really does challenge you and gives you that conflict to overcome or do whatever. But as long as it's in a closed system that is actually there to work with you, not to destroy all the relationships you have around you.
100%. 100%. Agree.
All right. Time to watch Requiem for a Dream again. I'm just kidding. I don't know about tonight, bro.
Those last 20 minutes of a movie are some of the hardest 20 minutes I've ever sat through for a film.
I will say, if anybody does want a potent medicine, a potent, strong, bitter medicine about how fucked up reality can be so you never go there, it's Requiem for a Dream. I should be a constant reminder. Not constant, but let's say a landmark of a reminder.
100%. And remember when you're watching it, dude was 31 when he made that. 31 years old. It's a really, really amazing film for a 31-year-old to pop out.
Yeah, man. All right, my friend. Enjoy your time.
I will do. Peace and love to all. May Johnny and Amber move forward in merriment, joy, and oneness.
Unity, empathy, power. Yeah.
Thank you for your time and your